So, we've done all the Invitations of the Nine. I got all the books of Ecdysis. 9 books, starting with Seeds and Cuttings. Hello? There we go. 1. On the day she boards the Yang Li Wei, they call her Nasya Sarwar. She carries in her knapsack an unopened letter from her brother, her mother's ashes, a selection of seeds and cuttings from her favorite neighborhood trees and plants, and some 30,000 songs and short videos on a hand-me-down Mio electric augment. On the ship's manifest, Nasya Sarwar is one of 24 classless scopars, trash collectors, and composters and caretakers devoted to endlessly tidying the many surfaces and people within the Yang Wei that cannot or do not clean themselves. She hopes through hard work and perseverance she will prove herself worthy of one of the ship's remaining civilian cryopods, or, even better, a promotion to an auterge position where she believes she'll find the freedom to devote her waking hours entirely to the loving care of the ship's hydroponics facilities. Nasya is quadrilingual. Several of her fellow scopars are not. Born monolinguals who get lucky in the international Ecdysis lotteries, just like she did. When they realize that she can speak to some of them, they do their best to befriend her. They share meals. They show her photos of the loved ones they left behind. They explain the function of the ship's many impossible machines. In turn, she does her best to teach them how to speak to the others. In this way, they are all a little less alone. She is 27 years old. 2. On the day she awakens in the distributary, she names herself Nasan R. She carries in her hands a small silver jar. A dent has crushed its lid. It is impossible to open. She does not know its provenance, but she feels an inexplicable tugging of grief in her chest when she thinks about her walking on without it. So earlier she had her parents' ashes, I guess. 27 years old when she's on the Yingli Way. Then the collapse happens, and the Awoken are created when dark and light tear up the Yingli Wei ship, and they become the Awoken and lose all their memories of their human lives. And they awaken in the distributary. She awakens with the ashes of her parents in a small silver jar. A dent has crushed its lid. It's impossible to open. She makes herself a home under the largest tree she can find. In the early days, it is a little more than a lean-to and a campfire, but she shares it willingly with whoever passes by. Her guests help her transform the lean-to into a proper cottage with several guest beds. One cottage becomes 2, then 2 is 3, until 3 becomes a village. Nasan loves her guests and friends. She loves her little ramshackle community, but she never wished to become mother or mayor. Whenever they gather in the evening for dinner, she feels claustrophobic, anxiety pressed tight around her. She is shackled to the earth by all these people that she loves, and she has no words to explain her own restlessness. She feels monstrous. Why doesn't she love this? Why doesn't she want to stay? One clear night, amid the honey-heavy smell of spring flowers and recent rain, she takes her silver jar and goes out into the dripping dark. 3. She wanders. She tries and lives. She tries on. She tries on lives like she's trying on city-tailored fashions. For a few weeks, she is a corsair. Then for a whole summer, she is a field hand. When she tires of that, she balances books for an atom merchant who trades in radioactive materials. Nothing holds her. Seeing her silver jar, one man suggests she may be a treasure hunter. The idea sends her deep into a subterranean cavern where she finds no treasure, but instead a bioluminescent worms and a paladin who calls herself Sure Ido. Bioluminescent worms and a paladin who calls herself Sure Ido. If you're looking for a job, Sure says, I should introduce you to my boss. 4. On the day Nassan finds her calling, the diaserum styles her a translator. It confuses her because the speech is the speech. Variations have developed over time, but none are so distant from each other that two awoken from around the world cannot speak to each other. What do you mean? Nassan asks. Well, the diaserum adds, I've been watching since you arrived. People look to you when they're fighting, and you try to understand each side before you try to help. When you speak, you do it deftly, without condescension. She considers Nassan. It seems to me that you lend people grace when you help them explain themselves. A little candle of pride flickers in Nassan's throat. That's just mediation, she says, glancing away. Don't sell yourself short. Anyone can break up a fight. Few people can so clearly grasp the spirit of a thought, then rephrase it so that deaf ears hear it. Gifts like that can end wars. Ah. Gifts like that can end wars. Okay. Thinking on that, the diaserim sobers. We'll have to keep your talent to ourselves for now. The sanguine would just as soon cut out your tongue. So the diaserim is who Mara eventually conspires against back in the old Awoken days. 5. The Theodicy War is a fact of life until it isn't. The killing stops, but the wounds remain. Nassan helps the Awoken mend. Her friends urge her to speak publicly, to help people on a grander scale. But Nassan believes the most effective change happens in groups of fewer than 10. It's a long time coming. The next book is called Oracle. There came a morning when the Techians spoke in unison, though none were near each other, and they said, Who are you who builds a hidden city here in our thoughts? And Mara, alone in the Queen's Walk of the Dreaming City, heard their voices ring out as if each witch stood... Is this? Oh, that's the wrong thing. How did I get out of Ecdysis? The next book is Chords of Meaning. My bad. 6. She is standing in a crowd of thousands when Marasob tells the Awoken about the dying world they abandoned. The idea sucker punches her, one crippling jab to every tender part of her. For 4 sleepless nights, she can scarcely draw breath without gulping. She holds her silver jar to her forehead, focusing on its cool, constant weight, and knows that she must leave. Wow, that went quick. Straight to Mara telling everybody they need to leave the distributary and go back to our sol system. 7. She finds her old friend Sure. Amid the feverish departure preparations, there is somehow time for an introduction to Mara. Nassan makes a pledge of herself and her skills. She will do what she can to convince those who might stay behind. So, Sure was previously under the Diasim, who Mara then overthrows, and Sure and Aldrin had a little fight to, like, a weird champion of this one versus champion of this one, and they tied, and Sure pledged herself to Mara, and over the years they decided to leave the old Awoken homeworld. That's a weird little summary. So Nassan also pledges herself to Mara, and Mara says no. Mara interrupts with a bite of an unsweetened tea. I would not ask that of you or anyone else. Nassan hesitates. Help those who have already made their choice. Whatever it is, help them with the grief. She clasps Nassan's hands. The stress around her eyes eases. That's more important. Mara interrupts with the bite of unsweetened tea. It's an interesting line there. 8. The Ecdysis is absolute in its terror. Nassan has never felt such a profound sense of schism, not when leaving lovers, nor communities, nor cherished hiding places. As the distributary shrinks behind their hulls, she looks down at the little silver jar in her hands and wonders who she left behind in the world they're returning to protect. She wonders if they might still be alive. 9. Sure is as plain and ready a companion as she ever was in the Diaserim's camp, but Mara is an enigma. Nassan feels drawn to her, not by her porcelain beauty, but by her onion skin layers of defense. There are so many different truths that ring through Mara's carefully chosen words, chords of nuanced meaning that she feels she might be able to separate out into cleaner notes for frightened minds craving simplicity. She does what she can. In quiet hours and fragmented conversations, she becomes an unconventional counselor to the would-be queen. When the first fragile attempts at rebuilding society run afoul of the long, unquiet night, then the discovery of the traveler and the fallen, and then inevitably turn to riot and desertion. Nassan goes to Mara again to pledge her services. Let me go after them, she begs, not a day after the proclamation that they all hear in their skulls instead of their ears. I don't mean to change their minds or convince them to come back. Then what do you mean to do? Shira asks curiously. Mara watches her with ageless patience, waiting for her to find the words. Nassan purses her lips. I want them to understand that you are good, that you aren't what they think. Seeing Shira bristle, she holds up her hand. To her relief, Mara makes a slight warning gesture as well. And if they know that and still wish to live apart from us on Earth, that's fine. That's their choice. I don't need them to understand that, Mara says softly. There is the faintest husk of grief in her steady voice. No, Nassan agrees, relieved that Mara is willing to consider this truth. You don't. You have the courage to be disliked, and that is uncommon. But it is just as important, sometimes, to cultivate goodwill, especially if you have forgotten what it feels like to not know everything, she thinks. Mara looks away. Nassan watches closely and thinks that perhaps she has been heard. Shira shifts her weight impatiently, tired by all this meaningful silence. It has been a long 19 hours. If you go, Mara says finally, you cannot come back. Nassan hears the truth in it. She reaches to clasp Mara's hand. Of course. So that happens not long after the Awoken go back to the Sol system. They fight a war with the Fallen, they discover the Traveler and Guardians and all this stuff, and they stay hidden away from humanity, and they're kind of protecting it from afar, trying to establish the Awoken in the system again. And at a point where Mara can suddenly be heard by all Awoken, some of the Awoken decide, once they rediscover humanity, that they need to go help humanity immediately, while Mara and the rest of the Awoken think that they need to establish themselves first and keep warding off other dangers separately from humanity. So there's a split. A lot of Awoken go to Earth, and they kind of eventually over time sever their ties to the Awoken and forget their past. And Nassan is saying she wants to go try to make people understand that the right choice was to be with the Awoken under Mara. But Mara says if you go, you can't come back. So, 10. So she goes to Earth. She carries a survival kit, a hunting rifle, and the tarnished silver jar that has followed her through her whole existence. She finds no Awoken as she wanders an empty prairie. She spreads no gospel. It is not 2 weeks before a band of Risen, wild with fear of themselves, each other, and the unknown, ambush her lonely campsite and kill her in her sleep. So she goes to help Awoken, who have gone to help people on Earth, and the newly arisen people that are going to eventually be called Guardians kill her in the early days of the Dark Ages, when Guardians are first becoming a thing. That was Chords of Meaning. The next book is called Risen. 11. On the day her ghost resurrects her, she asks him for a name, and he calls her Orin. He asks her for a name, and she calls him Gaul. Morrow deep instinct drives that decision. She could not declare it etymology if someone held a knife to her throat. Gaul explains that there is a settlement a few days' walk to the east, that there is no road, and that the wilderness is regularly patrolled by roving aliens who will try to kill them both. As he speaks, Orin looks around. They are surrounded by a young forest, vivacious with birds and clouds of gnats. It is impossible to imagine that a deadly alien might be lurking somewhere nearby. But Gaul found her. Gaul knows more about the world than she does. She trusts him. She scavenges the leaf litter until she finds a fallen tree limb. Will this help? She asks him, testing its heft. He twists his wings, puzzled. Against the aliens? She elaborates. Oh, courteous, he pretends to consider it, then, no, probably not. They have guns. I see, she says, though she doesn't. She breaks off the smaller branches, using her foot for leverage. Soon, she has a crude mace. It is heavy, slow, and does not break when she tests it against a tree trunk. She doesn't know what the aliens look like. She does not know what guns are. She does trust Gaul, but she can't help thinking, if an alien tried to attack her while she was armed with a stick like this, she would have no trouble crushing its skull. So she becomes one of the Risen, and yet again has no memory of her former self as a human or as an Awoken. So she's lost her life twice and forgotten her past twice now. And she becomes the very thing that killed her. 12. They reach the settlement. It is smoldering cinder and ruin. Gaul frets about fission products and acute radiation, so Orin lingers at a distance and studies what remains. A cat moves amongst the most distant rubble, hunting for mice. A tattered banner stirs in the breeze. She sees nothing more, so she ignores Gaul's warning, and goes in for a closer look. She finds bodies, adults mostly, some children. There are little houses for big animals, but there are no big animals among the dead. How did this happen? She asks, overcome by grief for these charred strangers. Aliens? I doubt it. The fallen often use nuclear weapons. It ruins the land. My guess is that a warlord raided this place for its livestock and then set off a bomb. Why? Gaul gives a little shrug, bobbing in place. Why not? No one was here to stop them. One sec. Runny nose. Orin clenches her mace a little tighter. She feels nauseous. Can you tell when it happened? He runs the computations. Not precisely. Less than 36 hours ago, I suppose. I should have walked faster, she mutters, and then bends over to be sick. You can't do that here, Gaul interrupts anxiously. Stop, Orin, stop. You have radiation poisoning. If you're sick here, you'll die here, and then I'll have to resurrect you here, and you'll be sick and die again and again. You have to move. Come. I told you not to walk around here. Radiation sickness. That's kind of contradictory when he said it wasn't the aliens, because the aliens usually use nuclear weapons. But then she gets radiation sickness. Anyways, that was the Risen book. Next is Warhammer. 13. Orin graduates from wooden mace to stolen scorch cannon, from bare flesh to salvaged plate. The fallen do not interest her, but they are well provisioned. She hunts them to better hunt warlords, and makes many enemies of many older, wilier Risen than she. 14. The Pilgrim Guard finds her pinned down in a box canyon, fighting alone and out of ammunition against a gang of 6 mercenaries. She is a graceless fighter with an unflappily grim resolve, so when they sweep in to help her, she does not immediately recognize them as the cavalry. She sees them coming, considers the odds, and then raises her empty scorch cannon to wield as a maul. 17 to 1, she'll try her luck. They laugh about it later over weak tea and hard track. 15. When the guard invites her to join them, they present her with a warhammer. It is as tall as she is. Along its grip, they've engraved the words, I am the end of all things. in tidy block print. 16. She meets a young woman whose skin looks like hers. Where did you come from? Orin asks, staring too hard, standing a little too close. It is impossible not to. Every other blue-skinned person she has ever seen has either been dead or a distant figure hurrying for a gleaming ship. The young woman cringes away from her. The Sinalone Ruins. She's from the Sinalone Ruins. Never heard of that. Are there other people there like you? No. Hearing her question, one of her friends pulls her aside to point up to the sky. Your people are up there, he says. They live among the asteroids. Why aren't they here? She asks, but he has no answer. 17. The everyday rhythm of the Pilgrim Guard suits her for decades. Eradicate warlords and alien invaders, protect mortal civilians, guide homeless refugees to safety. Their numbers wax and wane over time, but they are forever the watchers in the dark, the living shield that shelters, the ladder which humanity will climb towards rebirth. Inspiring campfire speeches are an endless fact of life, and they buoy her until she begins to recognize the leitmotifs of self-sacrificing heroism. Orin loves her leaders and friends. She loves her little ramshackle community, but she never wished to become soldier or symbol. Whenever they gather in the evening for dinner, she feels claustrophobic, anxiety press around her. She is shackled to the wilds by all these people that she loves, and she has no words to explain her own restlessness. Alone on night watch, she tells Gaul that she feels monstrous. Why doesn't she love this? Why doesn't she want to stay? That old familiar feeling. So that was Warhammer. Next is question after question. 18. There are stories of a massive settlement in the far south. Rumors call it the last safe city. A place of peace and prosperity, guarded by indestructible old Russian warriors, who fight alongside 20-foot-tall wolves, whatever those are. The Pilgrim Guard has heard of many so-called safe cities. They come and go, but mostly they go. Still, they reroute their caravan. The land down south is good, arable, temperate, and with too many indigenous parasites for the fallen to wish it as a customary home. Even if there is no safe city there, it is a better place to guide civilians than the ravaged deserts and plains of the north. Orin hopes the rumors are true, but it is a selfish hope. If the city is real, then people are safe there, then maybe she can rest. 19. City is a misnomer. It has been a misnomer since this place's inception. It is a chaotic sprawl of tents and shabby lean-tos. There is not a single permanent structure among them. The streets are nothing more than muddy pathways that smell of waste and smoke. But the people! Neither Orin nor Gaul have seen so many people in all their lives. Filthy children scream with laughter as they play tag around salvaged tanks. A civilian militia stands vigil over cassavas farmers. Armored Risen bicker over where they should mark the city's borders and how best to defend them. The traveler looms overhead as Orin wanders through it all, wide-eyed and exhilarated. 20. The Pilgrim Guard prepares to move out, provisioned to make an 18-month expedition through the far north. Orin stays behind. No one questions her decision, though they do grieve it. Each one of them cuts a notch into the grip of her warhammer until it reads, I, 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 I am the end of all things. Now that's 9 I's. 21. There are Woken here in the safe city. They are uncommon, though exos are even rarer. Most have ghosts, as she does. A few do not. And it's these people that Orin is most fascinated by. She dogs them with relentless patience, asking question after question. Where do you come from? Why have you come here? Where are the rest of us? Where did you get that gun? What are those bullets made out of? Why doesn't everyone have those bullets? Do people ever move to avoid you? Do you hear voices when you are alone? Are your dreams ever like omens? If I was one of you, why didn't everyone ever come looking for me? That is the end of question after question. The next book is Queen's Law. 22. Nam Chi Sen is the first person to take her seriously. If we're going to talk a while, we might as well sit down, he says, gesturing to a nearby stack of ammunition crates. He is a pilot from the reef, and he has been sent to recover. He is a pilot from the reef, and he has been sent to recover downed surveillance drones he calls crows. His Hildian sustained damage during a dogfight with a fallen skiff, and now an important pump is leaking. He cannot find the source of the leak, nor does he have the supplies to repair it. The rest of the Awoken are at home, in the reef. The gun is a standard issue Tiger Spite AR. It uses cased telescoped rounds made of proprietary plasteel spin metal blend. There are engineers hard at work on manufacturing techniques that will allow for widespread distribution of the weapon to Risen and civilian populations on Earth. People do avoid him. Earthborn and Risen Awoken almost never speak to him. He is surprised that she bothered. He does hear voices. He does have prophetic dreams. He describes it all in detail, and she is shocked by how familiar it sounds. It is like listening to a recording of herself. At her final question, he hesitates. He runs a grimy hand through his hair and looks up at the stars. They have been talking a long time. If we're going to talk some more, he says, at last, we might as well have a drink. 23. Namchi is not particularly tall, nor particularly handsome. Taken in isolation, parts of him are beautiful. His nose, his hands, the lines of his throat. The coruscating light that passes over his skin fascinates her. She watches to see if its patterns match her own. They do not. Most of all, Orin is struck by his ability to listen with empathy. He is quiet more often than not. Long silences don't frighten him, and when he speaks, he does it deftly, without condescension. 24. It takes 8 weeks to repair the leaking pump. In that time, Orin convinces Namchi to break Queen's Law and smuggle her and Gaul beyond the Vestian outpost. She is determined to understand why she revolted against her own people. They are scarcely a half-day's burn towards Interamnia before they are intercepted by galleots painted in the Queen's colors. 25. Oof, sure Ido says when she sees Orin for the first time. Mara's gonna hate this. She crosses the detainment cell to get a better look at Gaul. Figured this might happen eventually, but I'd always hoped. She pulls at the nape of her neck, then gives a little half-shrug. Well, what can you do? Turning, she looks at Namchi. You know you broke the law, right? He nods. She claps him on the shoulder and smiles. My man. 26. Two paladins deliver her to Marasov. Gaul is not permitted in the court, nor is Namchi. I knew you, Orin says before Mara can speak. It is uncourtly etiquette, she supposes, but they are alone and she is too bold to fear offense. What do you remember? Orin gives a slight shake of her head. Moments pass. Mara, too, is comfortable with silence. Behind her mask of composed indifference, her eyes are sharp with curiosity. Why did I leave? Orin asks. You wished to be my emissary. And you banished me for it? She squints. That doesn't seem like something you'd do. Mara smiles faintly. No. 27. They have several more conversations. The revelations are absolute in their terror. Orin has never felt such a profound sense of schism, not when learning that most mortals would sooner swallow cyanide pills than come face to face with a Risen, nor that the Elixni were once abandoned by the Traveler, nor that almost all warlords are light-bearers. 28. But the Queen's law is, of course, the Queen's law. It must be upheld. But the spirit of the law often differs from its letter. Namchi accepts a sentence of 5 years indentured servitude to the crown for smuggling Orin into reef holdings. They let him pick his detail and negotiate his salary. Orin's case is not so simple. She is not who she was, so after vigorous philosophical debate, it is decreed that she cannot be held accountable for her past oaths. But she engaged in witting trespass, aided and abetted by a learned civilian, and for that she must sacrifice a boon, an unnamed future debt of the crown's choosing. Orin accepts the sentence gladly and returns to Earth to mend her wounds. She needs to think. She needs to talk. That was Queen's Law. The next book is Debt. 29. It seems everyone knows the Pilgrim Guard now. Their numbers have quintupled and only continue to grow. The grateful civilians of the last safe city style them guardians, and they wear the title well. Orin is glad to see her friends doing well. She does not rejoin them. 30. During his sentence, Namchi maintains daily contact with Orin via vidcom and hollow projection. When he is released, she begs him to come get her. She wants to understand what humanity was trying to achieve before it stooped to setting off nuclear warheads in order to steal a few cows. They scour the inner planets in his Hildian. When parts of it break down, they work odd jobs. They are deliriously happy. Centuries pass. 31. On the day that Sure Ido dies, she receives a call from Mara Sov. I would ask for my boon, the queen says with shaking voice. It is the first time she dares to trust a guardian. It will not be the last. 32. The queen paces as Orin leans on her warhammer. I need to know who killed her, Mara says. To know or to see them killed? Mara's grief and anger blaze across her face. She looks out at the reef as she struggles to master herself. Orin imagines Namchi dead and clenches her warhammer a little tighter. At last, Mara says, first, to know. She gives Orin the strange coin that the search party found on Sure's body. I am not sure it was a murder. 33. The search sends her deep into a sublunar cavern where she finds no enemies, but instead clouds of steam and a half-man with grasping tentacles where his face should be. Forgive them, he rasps as she crushes his windpipe in her fist. Who? She snarls, tightening her grip. His face writhes with growing urgency, reminding herself that she came here for answers first and vengeance second. She pushes him away. He staggers, steadies, reaches into his robes to draw something out. Orin, Gull warns, but she's already seen it. She hefts her warhammer and strikes him hard in the chest. It's like hitting a ball off of a tee. There is no resistance. He caroons off of a dewy boulder with a sickening crunch. That is his spine. He will never stand straight again. And as he hits the ground, a tarnished silver jar slips from his fingers. The sound echoes as it bounces away in the dark. Strange coincidence, man. 34. Orin uses a hunting knife and brute strength to puncture the jar's dented lid. She turns it over and pours a thin stream of pale gray powder into her gloved palm. Dust returns. It ever returns. The man chuckles wheezily. She looks up, and he is gone. So strange. So strange. That was Debt. Next is Synesthesia. 35. Orin begins to experience waking hallucinations. Immaterial strangers speak to her in unrecognizable languages. When she reaches for Namchi, she feels as if she is falling into him, being pulled through him, sieved into smaller and smaller scarves of some atom's self that he breathes into the blood of his bones. When she continues her hunt for the queen, she feels a crushing fist around her windpipe. There is something she must say, but she has no words to say it. There is somewhere she must go, someone she must be. It is not horrifying, though she thinks it should be. Instead, it is unspeakably lonely. 36. It grows steadily worse, until it is not possible to tell the difference between day and dream. She tries to describe her number-color synesthesia to Gaul, to Namchi, to Mara. She sees green and thinks 9. She reads purple and tastes 9. They all tell her to stop, to rest, to be still. There have been other breakthroughs, other messages. The 9 are known. She cannot. She hunts for the man with the writhing face. She hunts for herself. 37. On the day that Namchi dies, no one can reach her or Gaul, though they do try. She does not find out for months. 38. On the day she meets Wu Ming, she is on Bamberga. She has just left the Jensen lab. She has just read a transcript of Namchi's last words. Her hands are shaking. She feels nauseous. She feels she can see herself in third person, tottering to a safe place to sit and cry. Wu Ming is a bonfire in the darkness, and she crawls towards his warmth. 39. Wu Ming is ravenous for her stories of the 9. He asks whether she's met them, whether they can give a man power, whether they know a way out of this solar system. Orin cannot answer any of his questions, but she cannot keep her own stories down. She is sick with them. They come out in a compulsive bilious stream, and when she is emptied, she talks of herself, of her grief, of her restlessness, how she feels the most alive in the empty spaces between blinks, how she feels she is a snake perpetually slewing away its skin. Except this last molt is all wrong, and she is caught in the ghost throat of her old self. Wu Ming leaves his questions by the wayside as he is drawn inexorably into the gravity well of her desperate honesty. Her confessions lower his defenses. He talks of himself, of his fear, of his loneliness, how he feels he is only one fingernail away from plummeting into an abyss, how he feels vicious resentment every time he is brought back from the dead. He never asked for the gift of the light. 40. They make excuse after excuse to meet again. Every conversation is colored by excavated truths. Every day they feel they will reach some bedrock that will break them into pieces. It is as frightening as it is intoxicating. 41. Lies. 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 He is not Wu Ming. He is a man named Eli, a man named Dredgen Hope, a man named the Drifter. He is not vulnerable. He is a paranoid con man. He is a dead-hearted murderer. He is a cowardly liar. He is not her friend. He is waiting to make his move. He has always been waiting to make his move. She is stupid. She is so stupid to have fallen for his lies. She cannot mend this. 42. She leaves, and so too does the light. The severance is absolute in its terror. She has not felt such a profound sense of schism. It can be mended. Orin is not your name. So she leaves about the time of the Red War, when the Cabal captured the Traveler and severed the light from all Guardians. And then it seems as if the 9 talk to her a little more directly than her loose visions. It can be mended. Orin is not your name. That's Synthesia. The last book, the 9th book, is called Scales. 43. On the day she leaves to find the 9, the Techians name her Orin the Lost. She raids a storeroom in the Vestian outpost, stuffing into her knapsack digital schematics for a Phaeton backscatter scanner, a jade coin, several bundles of dried queen's foil, and nothing more. 44. She goes beyond the heliopause. It's a long walk, a sudden death. 45. She sheds herself and emerges anew in the glimmering scales of her old lives. An immigrant, a translator, an emissary, a hammer of judgment. They expect to claim her will, but she clenches it a little tighter. Her gifts can end wars. That is the Book of Ecdysis. It's interesting, the snake analogy of her shedding all her past lives. The Drifter's jade coin, which is one of the jade coins she packs before she leaves, is a depiction of two snakes coiled together. She sheds herself and emerges anew. They expect to claim her will, but she clenches it a little tighter. Her gifts can end wars is the same thing her first leader, whatever, the Diaserim said to her. Her gifts can end wars. Her gifts as a natural mediation, I don't know, a way of making two sides understand each other. Seems to be one of her natural gifts that can end wars. And then she becomes the emissary of the Nine. Strange. Strange. Very cool story, though. It's one of my favorite books in the game. Um, but still don't know what it all means. The part where she finds finds the ashes she doesn't even remember belong to her family, and the book that what is it? I think it's literally called the Book of Dust. Yeah, Dust. This is a book of the Nine, uh, of Cryptarch who talks to the Nine, or is searching for the Nine, and talks to Zur as well. And in it, when she talks to Zur, he has a red box, and he talks about dust at length. It's interesting stuff.